As most of you know, we normally meet on Mondays, the first Monday and third Monday of the month, but this being yesterday being the Reverend Dr. Luther King Jr.'s day, we postponed our meeting till tonight. Welcome, everybody. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. May we have a roll call of the commissioners?
Commissioner Iacopone?
Here.
Commissioner Roof?
Here.
And I'd just like to state for the record that both Commissioners Bergman and Dugan are absent this evening. Chair Bradley?
Here. Thank you. We have the next item is public comment. Public comment is limited to items not on the agenda. The Planning Commission may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed by the Brown Act of California. However, the Planning Commission's general policy is to refer items to the planning staff for their attention or have a matter placed on a future Planning Commission agenda for a more comprehensive action or report. Is there any public comment for items not on the agenda? If during the public hearing you wish to speak, please avail yourself of the forms back in the corner and give them to any one of us so we know who you are. We'll have the approval of the minutes now of our last meeting.
Could I just make
changes?
Could I just make one point on? I think it's 7D. I think at this meeting, Commissioners Dugan and Bergman will not be in attendance. Just the very last sentence.
Oh, at the end of the minutes.
Oh. Okay. I will move that the minutes of the January 7th, 2019 be approved as with the amendment as suggested.
Second.
We'll have a roll call.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Iacopone?
Yes.
And Chair Bradley?
Yes. Thank you. The minutes are approved. Now we move into the public hearing. Procedure for public hearings. The planning staff will present a report on the history, physical features, etc. on the application, followed by the staff's recommendations. The applicant will make a presentation. Thereafter, interested members of the community may speak on the proposal. When all interested parties have had an opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed and no further discussion from the floor can be held. The Planning Commission will then consider the evidence and make its recommendation. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else has raised at the public hearing described in this notice, or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Speakers should fill out a speaker's form, as I mentioned back in the corner, and hand it to any one of us so we may hear from you up front. The speaker should come up to the microphone to speak, since the meeting is being recorded, and this will assist our planning staff in preparing the minutes of the meeting. Thank you. And the first case, we have two cases tonight. First is 560 El Camino Real, an application for a new 4-story building containing 24 residential units and 2 commercial units with an at-grade covered parking. This item was continued from our December 17th, 2018 meeting. Sorry, I didn't need to say all that. You're going to tell us that.
Thank you. Thank you for that
Thank you, Lisa.
introduction. Good evening, Commissioners. Lisa Costa-Sanders, Principal Planner. As indicated, the project at 560 El Camino. There we go. There we are. The Planning Commission reviewed this item at your December 17th meeting, and at that meeting, commissioners expressed concern with the mass of the building, specifically at the northeast corner, the unbundled parking proposal, and the lack of visitor parking. The applicant has modified the building design to increase the 4th floor setback at that northeast corner, has removed the request for unbundled parking at this time, and designates 4 on-site visitor parking spaces. I'll show you the design, and then the project architect is also here to walk through those design revisions for you. So you see at the northeast corner of the building, the applicant has increased the setback at the 4th floor an additional 4 feet from the front wall below and an additional 2.5 feet from the side wall below. The image on the left was the original design, and you can see that additional setback with the image on the right. Just another view of that corner and the change here. You see the original on the left and the revision on the right. And one more view. I think this one really shows how much it's set back from that front wall. And then just a closer view. I think it does balance out nice with the other side of the elevation as well. And then parking was discussed as well at your last meeting. So the project does require a total of 31 on-site parking spaces, and the applicant proposes to provide 35 spaces. Parking is provided in a mix of standard spaces, tandem spaces, as well as parking stackers. And as shown on the site plan, the applicant has designated 4 guest parking spaces, and I've highlighted those with the yellow rectangles. The project does comply with the city's on-site parking requirement. As they indicated, the applicant did remove the unbundled parking request at this time. Staff as well would like to work with the applicant further to kind of work out those details of unbundled parking, try to find some best practices in the area, and the applicant may come back at a later time with a request for unbundled parking, and that could happen at any time, even after the project's approved and in operation. So I just wanted to put that out there for the commission. The requested entitlements includes design review, tentative map for the subdivision to create the condo units, a below market rate housing plan, and the transportation demand management plan. These were all reviewed in detail at your December 17th meeting. So at this meeting, I was just highlighting the changes that have occurred since then. The public notice has been mailed twice. So for the original meeting, the notice was mailed December 5th and then most recently on January 9th. Also published in the newspaper for the original meeting December 6th and then most recently January 10th. And 3 comments have been received, and you should have those comments before you. One is from Gus Dato expressing concern with the development. One is from the Sierra Club expressing support, as well as from David Crabb, I believe also expressing support, and those are in front of you this evening. This is the formal motion should you choose to approve the project. We also do have a request to modify one of the conditions. The applicant has been working closely with their engineer and the city's Public Works Department relating to the easement on site. And it's been determined that the easement cannot be quit claimed, but Public Works engineering staff as well as the applicant's engineer has decided on a process that would be appropriate. So on condition number, let's see, where am I? There's so many. 12X. The original condition indicated developer and or his title company shall quit claim or abandon applicable existing easements on site as shown on the attached tentative map. Rather than be so specific with quit claim or abandon, I'd rather replace that with just shall address the existing easements, and that will remain to the satisfaction of the city engineer and the building official. So the change would be to strike shall quit claim or abandon applicable and replace it with address the easements. And I don't have anything else to add to the staff presentation at this time. Be happy to answer any of your questions. The project architect is also here.
Questions from the commission?
Lisa, could you please just say this easement is the AT&T?
That's correct.
Easement? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's actually going to be a letter that AT&T is going to allow the building to occur, so the easement will remain in place, but they'll accept the improvements over the easement.
Good. Thank you.
I don't know if this is a question for you or for the applicant, but with 1.5 spaces per two-bedroom unit, presumably either a unit gets one space or two spaces. So how is that handled? And I'm particularly interested in whether the moderate and low-income units, how it applies with them.
Yeah, so I'll defer to the applicant, but the parking could just remain open so that it's not assigned to a unit and it's kind of available to residents on a first come, first served basis. But I'll defer to the applicant as to what they have in mind in particular. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now it's the applicant's turn to speak.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening. Steve Kellen, project architect. Good to see you again. While they're pulling this up, thank you to staff for outlining that. Since we came to you last time, we appreciate your specific comments. We looked at those pretty hard and tried to figure out, ways that we could improve the project, based upon some of those things. First slide here kind of reiterates a little bit of what staff said, but just a summary of, the changes that we're proposing this evening, with this project. We looked at this upper unit that's in the northeast corner. It's unit 401. Basically, in the reduction of the massing in that corner and pulling the walls back, that went from a two-bedroom unit to a one-bedroom unit. So that was fairly significant considering, these kind of development projects and value, for each of those units. So that was a major change. Specifically, as staff outlined, item number 2, on that 4th floor, we looked at that northeast corner and pulled, basically that entire front wall back 3 feet, which offsets it 4 feet from the wall below. So all the way from the living room, to that corner, as well as the entire side. And we'll look at this in the floor plan. That entire side was also moved over, 2'6". So that would be very similar to the opposite corner, which you noticed in some of the renderings. Third thing was we realized there were a lot of questions and details regarding the unbundled parking, and we know that the city hasn't yet approved a project like that. We're proposing to simplify this. So we're withdrawing the request for the use permit, related to the unbundled parking. Our TDM plan has been revised accordingly, and that's consistent with the zoning ordinance that talks about, allowable reduction so long as we've provided a 20% trip reduction, which we have, and that's in the TDM report. We also looked at dedicating guest spaces in response to some concerns, comments about that. So as staff noted, we've identified, 4 guest parking spaces in the garage. And then the last item, we do agree that we should address, the opportunity for, some solar power for this project. At this time, we're requesting, hopefully, that we be allowed approval that we are going to provide some system, but we need a little more time to work out, some of the details. This is a fairly large, complex project. We have been working with consultants on this. We've considered several options. We just didn't quite have kind of a final decision yet on what the specifics of that system are going to be at this point. We're looking at because it's a large, complicated building, we have several factors such as, do we just provide solar for, say, common spaces, electric vehicle chargers? We have the HOA component, knowing that these units are going to be sold, and how does that relate to, a cost for each of the residents? So it's more complicated than just saying, hey, we want to put 20 panels on the roof, and this is what it is. So hopefully you have seen enough projects with solar and can appreciate that and respect our wish to finalize that with staff, but we are dedicated to doing something that is really going to be the right decision, for this project. And I think that's what we're getting after in requesting that we have time to do that. Did I hit the wrong button?
So I guess you're saying at this time you don't know how it's going to be done, but you agree that it will be done.
Correct. Our proposal is we will be providing a solar photovoltaic system. It will be located on the roof, since that's the most appropriate location for it. I can't answer a question right now about how many panels, what the kilowatt size is. Like I said, because we're evaluating different, proposals and what's going to be the right investment, for the project.
Do you think there's a minimum, like in the cases you've looked at, is there a minimum I don't know what a right number is, but it's going to be 12 kilowatts and might be 16, but we don't know, or.
Right. That's a good question. And I asked, the solar consultant coming into this meeting, hey, is there some number we can throw out there? I think the challenge is that multiple things. For example, if you just look at scope of, in terms of kilowatt, different size systems, for example, he was saying, well, a typical residential project might be like a 7 kilowatt system. If you were to just do like some of the electrical vehicle chargers, maybe that's more like a 15 kilowatt system. The challenge that we have is, because we're in the planning stage, we need our electrical engineer to do some more analysis on what some of those loads are going to be, provide that information, more specific information back to the solar folks, so that we can, I guess, have a better analysis to decide, what's the right way to go. So.
Do you think that there's a time by which the applicant, your client, could think about committing to having it installed? Like 12 months, or when you think about when this will be available for customers and owners of the units, when are you thinking?
So the intent would be to have it installed with the construction of the project. This is not an item that we would come back later. And the main reason for that is there's certain infrastructure with the photovoltaic system that has to be included initially. So it makes sense for us to just go ahead and do it with the construction of the project.
Good, thank you.
Yep. And one more thing I would add is we likely would have these details figured out probably by the time we were going to submit for building permit, or close to that. Yeah. These are some images. I know that staff had just shown them to you, but we kind of had the same idea, I guess. The top shows images from the original proposal renderings that you reviewed last time, and the bottom are just the comparative same views. So, you can see, as staff described, where we had pulled back walls. So as I mentioned in my intro, I don't know if this has a pointer, but if, for example, you look at the front view at the bottom, which is in our revised, on the far right-hand side, you'll see the corner. There's a bedroom that's on the far right, and then to the left of that is a living room. When I say that entire wall section was moved back, what I mean is from the left, where you see the deck and trellis, all the way to the right-hand corner. So that entire wall, both the recessed and the one closest to the street, was moved back. So there's a 4-foot offset between that and the third floor below. And then on the side, if you're to look at the middle image on the bottom, which would kind of be a corner view looking south on El Camino, or if you're coming from the north side, that entire wall, there's a bedroom, and then some spaces behind it. That was all moved back as well. So fairly significant chunks of that upper 4th floor that we were trying to address and reduce the massing. And I think one thing I would point out, if you look at the lower left-hand image, is that as we were trying to address the southeast corner, the opposite one, I'm happy that I think that this resulted in a little more balance, actually, in how that 4th floor came out by pulling that corner in. We adjusted the windows as well to make those, similar. So I think there's a good, balance in that front elevation. This is just the 4th floor floor plan, so that you can see, what basically happened on that corner. Like I said, it used to be a 2-bedroom unit. Where the bathroom is, just below that bedroom, used to be the second bedroom, and we took that out as we, moved those 2 walls in. So, that changed the dynamics of that unit, which technically reduced our parking by 0.5, but because you always round up, the parking, didn't change. I won't go over much here. Staff had already identified, the 4 garage spaces that are going to be dedicated. Commissioner Roof, you had a question about, parking specifics. I guess, I can try to answer that in that, we have a diversity of parking proposed here. We have, tandem spaces, we have lift spaces, and then we have regular spaces. So, if you were to look at this objectively, I think you would say that, the larger units would be the first ones that would be available to be assigned for the tandem spaces. And then beyond that, you would have single spaces that could be assigned. So if you were to try to break this down, you would say, if you subtract out, the ADA spaces and the 4 dedicated guest spaces, you would essentially end up with 5 units that could have 2 spaces assigned to them. You would have 19 units that, could have 1 space. And then, of course, the 4 guest and 2 ADA. And I think that would be the most logical way to break it down, with the 5 units being the largest, in the building. And then this just shows the roof plan, again, back to, the idea of solar. We had originally shown areas that follow the building code, for solar-ready roof areas. So these would be the areas of the roof that, would contain panels as soon as we, can finalize that. And then staff mentioned, I think, our one question on the easement. Just to expand on that, we'd been working with, the title company, and we just had a specific issue with their language. So appreciate your consideration of that. So we can continue to work with them to work that out in a common sense way. I'm here if you have any specific questions.
I think at the last meeting, one of my colleagues asked a question about the distribution of the below market rate. It seemed to me at one point they were all located on the second floor, and there was a question about could they be distributed throughout in the upper floors. Do I recall that right?
I believe that was the other project that you looked at that evening.
Correct. That was the earlier project that
Thank
evening.
you.
Although the concept is relevant, I guess, what is the distribution of the below market units?
I believe we have them distributed on 3 separate floors. I don't have the plan in front of me. I don't know if staff knows that. They are separated, though. They're not all on one floor. Yes.
Okay, then.
Well, thanks for correcting my faulty recollection there, and good to know that you've done that. That's great.
And how many will there be, this 5% and 10% and 15%? What's the total of below market?
Yeah, there are 3 below market rate units proposed. Yes. One of them is a 1-bedroom.
Yeah.
1 is a 1-bedroom, and 2 are 2-bedroom.
Thank you.
For the record on the below market rate units, if you multiply, or the percentage of units, it would come out to be 3.6 units required. So,
no, it actually, I know that was in one of the support letters, but I don't believe that's technically correct. And this was an issue we had talked to staff about in the beginning, because the 15% should be taken from the maximum allowable unit density for the project, which is 22. So that ends up being 3.3, and then the 2 units are added under the state density bonus, so they're not included in the 15% calculation.
okay, thank you for clarifying.
And staff concurs, that's correct.
Okay, wonderful.
Any more questions?
Well, I guess I don't have a question. I just wanted to commend the moving back of the top floor. I think that can make a pretty big difference in how the building appears, especially from the street level when you're looking up. The top floor then becomes much less obvious, and I think that increases the compatibility with the existing character of the neighborhood somewhat. And it's a reasonable balance of our desire to have as much housing as possible close to the train station. So balancing these two things, I think you've, I think with the setback, additional setback, that helps. And so I'm quite pleased with your revised proposal in that regard. And also, it's very nice to see the solar installed from the outset. I can imagine in a multi-owner building, once it's been sold, it would probably be pretty hard to get organized to do such a thing. So having it be there at the beginning is an excellent thing.
Thank you.
Through the chair, before you open the public comment period, I would just like to suggest that you want to add maybe a condition 30 to memorialize that offer of a solar system, that a solar system shall be installed on the building to the satisfaction of the community development director.
Good. Thank you.
I like that.
I don't have any slips for this project, only one for the next project. We have 3 letters. Is there anyone?
We did receive one.
Oh,
Sorry.
thank you. David, come up front, please. Introduce yourself. We know you, but some of the people don't.
Good evening. David Crabb. I live in San Carlos, of course. Yeah, I wrote you a letter. 3 simple points. One, that there was concern in the Daily Journal that we're going to top a floor off this thing and a whole bunch of kind of scary things, and we don't like that. I don't like that. I certainly want you to keep that 24 units. So that's point 1. And really, because it's a TOD, it's in the perfect location. Why, if you don't do it there, we're just not meeting what the whole general plan was set up for, was that kind of a project in that location. Second thing, I still have an issue with the parking ratio. Transit-oriented developments, you shouldn't be asking more than 1 car per unit in a transit-oriented development, especially that one. It's right there. And you're asking 1.5 for the 2-bedroom units and so on. You should be able to get all of that whole project for 24, 22, and 2 or 3 for the restaurants, maybe 27 versus 35, which might help that parking situation. That parking situation is pretty weird. By weird, it's a little contorted in terms of making it happen, and I understand why, because it's a tiny site. To make it work, I don't even know how the mechanical is going to work. I know a lot of people use it. So that's an issue. And I was the one that brought the comment up about why 3 affordable houses versus units versus 4. I still think that even though it may not be required, that 4 units would be the affordable units would be the way we should go with this thing. It's close enough that they should be 4. People that are lower income are much more the ones that we want to get into transit-oriented developments, because they tend to use the public transit and they don't use cars, and people always complain about traffic. So there's that. So I would push you to see if you could maybe push them into a 4-unit below market rate project. And last but not least, I'm really disappointed that we lost unbundled parking. Unbundled parking has been something that has been, Sierra Club has been advocating for years in terms of trying to reduce the number of cars in a project. And every time we have a project come up in this town and every town up and down the peninsula, the first thing that people say is, too many cars. Why is all this traffic coming from this project? And if you don't have the parking, you do tend to reduce the traffic. And so I would urge you maybe to drop that parking ratio down to something a little bit more reasonable for a transit-oriented development. I had suggested 1-to-1 on the apartments, and then 1 or 2 or 3 per 1,000 square feet. Well, 1 per 1,000 square feet, which I guess about 3 for the number of square feet they have in this for the commercial section. So anyway, those are my points. I certainly hope that you do keep the 24 units at least. But I wish there was a little better alternative for that parking. I wondered if there was, it was ever considered to put the parking underground or not. And I don't know if it was ever asked the architect or not. If you put it underground, you could do those 24 cars without all the mechanical equipment, without tandem parking. It would be a lot better for the tenants. It would work a lot better for everybody. And then you could have maybe even more units in there potentially by using that part of that first floor. So just a thought, throwing it out. I'm sorry I came to this late. I missed your first hearing on this, so my apologies. I'm coming in secondhand here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not at all. Thanks for your comments, David. Did you consider underground? I think I might have asked that question, but it could have been on another project.
That's a good question. As I described last time, we wish that we could have done that, but unfortunately, as I described in the first meeting, there's an AT&T easement which bifurcates this property, and that really precludes any underground parking. We just can't make it work on, the leftover portion of the site on either side of the easement.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the Sierra Club here to speak? We have a nice long letter from them. How about Mr. Gus Dido? Are you here? We have a letter from him also. One yes and one no here. And next would be Bonnie McClure. Good to see you, Bonnie.
Bonnie McClure, San Carlos. I will just say that at the Sierra Club meeting that we had, the letter was gone over and it was presented to us, and we had differing opinions. And I'm not speaking for Sierra Club tonight. I'm just speaking as an individual. I just can't understand why this project wasn't looked over more by the city before they even started planning the developer plan, because that's an ideal place for a whole building of below a market rate. It's right there across from the train station and the buses, and if you had service employees that lived in the building, you wouldn't need as much parking. They could walk to work or go across the street and take public transportation. And you could have a 0.5 car ratio for the apartments because they wouldn't all be owning cars. And that's just my look. When I looked at it, and I saw all the extra bathrooms and things, I thought, this isn't a luxury location at all right there on El Camino. And the parking is a big mess. And so I just, that's my own opinion.
Thank you for your comments. Next, I think this is for the next project. David has spoken. That's next. That's all the slips I have, I believe, for this project.
If I have a question for the architect, is now the time to ask?
Yes.
Would you consider having 4 below market rate units?
I don't know how to answer that, except that I think the owner would not prefer to do that. I mean, we're just trying to follow I think the rules and the zoning, that's in place. So, yeah, I think the short answer is, no, I don't think we would automatically be willing to, add a fourth unit. Yep.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any more questions? Oh, come on up, please.
Architect Mike Bruno. I live in San Carlos. I own 567, 569 Laurel, directly behind the proposed project. And I had a couple of questions. The existing site plan and demo plan shows a construction staging area along the 20-foot alley. And I'm wondering if that is just for material storage or actually for construction parking. If it's for parking, at some point, based on the project design, they're taking up the entire site. So there wouldn't be any on-site parking available for subcontractors and the contractors. So I'm wondering where they would be parking at some point. You're going to have to be off-site somewhere. Also, if the guest spaces that are being provided now, the 4 spaces, are they only for residential occupants of the building, or is it for customers and of the 2 commercial spaces as well? And I'm not sure I read this correctly, but if the occupancy for the restaurant is up to 95, is that correct? What it shows on the plans? I don't remember. Well, if that's correct, that equates to maybe another 20 cars that have to find parking, which brings me to the point that I don't believe at the last meeting on this project or even this evening anything was addressed as to off-site parking where people would park. Not only additional cars owned by occupants of the condos, restaurant patrons, and customers of the retail space. The Samcar building no longer allows any public parking at all, day or night, holidays, weekends, because I confirmed that this week. The Wheeler Plaza is about 2 blocks away, as you know, and most people don't want to even walk 2 blocks. So, I'd like to hear from the applicant on these questions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would you like to respond?
Thank you. Those are all good questions. I would say, to answer your question on the construction staging, that is one of the specific conditions of approval, for any of these projects that we have to work through with the city. Your question about parking for construction, I would agree because of the development. I think that the construction plan is going to have to include off-site parking, and we've done that for other projects. And there's just agreements that have to be made where construction workers are brought in or shuttled in because there isn't physical space. I think we will have some room in the back that we show on our construction staging plan now for some material storage, but the rest of the site, as it is also shown, will be fenced off. So there will be protection, security, and then everything will be maintained within that. But I don't think that there's going to be any parking on site because there won't be much physical space. Your next question about the guest spaces that are being proposed, there isn't any specific guidance in the ordinance that talks about that. So I don't know if staff might have some input, but I could certainly see a scenario where the 4 dedicated spaces could be used, however the building wanted to use them, whether they were for, guests of the residents or, during the daytime, for the retail use. the way the zoning code is written right now, you asked a question about the restaurant and the retail space. And if those spaces are under 1,500 square feet, which both of these are, there is no requirement, for parking spaces for those. So, we're following, the zoning ordinance, with respect to those.
I understand that. I'm talking about.
Yeah.
No one's ever addressed off-site parking situation, where they're going to park. It hasn't been discussed at either meeting.
Well, I don't know how to answer that. I think it's every project that has a retail space that's less than 1,500 square feet would have the same, yeah. So there are places within the city that, they would have to park.
Don't worry about where they're going to park. They'll just congest everything else.
Yeah, well, I think those were all your questions?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Maybe just a quick follow-up. Can you remind us, is the parking garage like keypad or keyed or access? So it really, I think there was a question, will it be open for the general public? And I think the answer is no.
Well, again, I don't know how, correct, it will have a keypad entry, but I don't know how the zoning code interprets that for dedicated guest spaces. So, from a resident standpoint, pretty easy. You call and they can buzz you in. For the retail space, for example, which I could see as the most obvious use during the day, could there be a similar mechanism? I'm not sure how staff is, or the city has dealt with, that particular detail on other projects.
Okay, thank you.
But I know that the residents would want that secure garage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was just checking that was the likely outcome. So yes, you've said so.
Would the staff care to expand on both off-street parking and the control?
Well, as indicated in the staff report and the presentation, the code is really focused on requiring the residential parking on site. And for these size of commercial spaces, they're exempt, especially when it's in the downtown area. Very similar, downtown commercial spaces really don't have any on-site parking. So looking to have that provided with the public parking spaces. We do have a net increase of parking available at the Wheeler Plaza project. We also have employee parking at the top level of Samtrans, and we're working with them to continue that agreement. So we'll have some employee off-site parking opportunities at that top level. And we're looking for other areas where we can increase customer parking as well. We're seeing a lot more users of Lyft and Uber, a lot more people arriving to businesses in different ways. So the code's really focused on the residential parking requirement.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like you've anticipated the problem to me. Any more questions of the applicants or the staff on the commission? Seeing none, I'll move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Acapone?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Chair Bradley?
Yes.
So I would also echo, David, your comments. I very much appreciate the applicant and the architect for taking on board the dialogue that we had at the last meeting, and I think resulted in an attractive outcome. Recognize it changed one unit, but just want to acknowledge that you did that. Also appreciate the solar on the roof, and we'll look forward to adding that as a condition specifically, such that by the time you go for building permits, that detail is included. And I can imagine there are probably examples to draw on, but still have to be well thought through with your attorneys and the like. So thanks. So just acknowledgement of that.
I'd like to add, add on to that about the unbundled parking. We me and some of the other commissioners did have quite a few questions about that because it was a new device. But personally, I would be very supportive of an unbundled, so long as it appears workable at least from our purview as commissioners. So I would encourage you to come back with such a plan. I'm sure there would be questions about how those spots would be deeded. Would be one, if I were faced with such a proposal in the future, that would be a question I would have, how the spots that are allocated to the below market units would be allocated as well. But the concept of unbundled, I think, is quite an excellent one. And if you guys work on it and find a solution, you can be a model for that for other buildings as well. So,
maybe one question for staff. This question is on below market rate housing and the kind of the multiplier or the guideline, the rule. Does either the Planning Commission or the city have latitude in any specific project or in terms of ordinance to modify what the rules are and therefore influence upward the number of units in a given project or require?
Right. Sure. So the city's existing code does require that 15% be set aside for below market rate units. If that's something that we wanted to modify, the city could adopt an ordinance amendment that would up that requirement. We'd want to look at some, feasibility to make sure that didn't make the projects financially infeasible. But that is certainly something the Planning Commission and City Council could consider.
Great. Thank you.
But would we have to amend the zoning?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The way that the formula is calculated is set in the ordinance, so any changes to that formula, like rounding up, would need to be done. However, I think in the next year or so, we will be looking at our below market rate ordinance and any revisions to bring it up to current practice. So you can anticipate having an opportunity to look at the formula and how it's done and the numbers in the ordinance in the next year.
Thank you.
In my opinion, since we're in discussion mode among the commissioners, I would say that we don't have any leverage or basis to ask for more than what the law requires in fairness for what other units have. I think it's worth asking. You never know; they could have wanted, but I don't see a way to put that on this project without. It's my opinion.
I would agree.
I thought it would be useful to discuss the parking situation a little bit more, because we've heard kind of two different perspectives, where some one perspective that fewer parking is appropriate because you want to encourage non-car based use of the building. And on the other hand, there's concern, I think, especially from the neighborhood perspective, that there may be worsening of the parking situation on the street. So how do we make sure we've got the right balance there is the question. And
I think you and I, and I know our chair has been doing this longer, I'm sure every time there's a project, there's a conversation around, and how does San Carlos address its parking? Great job with Wheeler Plaza, and there's an awful lot of units going in, and so I suppose at some point, maybe revisiting what the master plan has in mind for parking in the next phase in the next couple of years would be useful, because I feel the tension personally as I try to do business, find something that is relatively convenient, and I also am mindful of the businesses that are already here where their patrons are competing for fewer spaces. So it'd be great, again, to the extent it's within our purview, it'd be great to re-look at the master plan for parking and see what, if any, recommendations we take or make to the city council.
Well,
assuming they really want that opinion, which I trust they do.
Well, it's been a long time since we've sort of touched on the issue of downtown parking with the Planning Commission. Just a brief summary of where we are. The City Council approved a parking master plan for the downtown not too long ago, and in that parking master plan, it had a number of action items to improve downtown parking in particular. And there's a number of sort of low-hanging fruit areas that the city will be embarking on, and we're working on right now. And a few of those things are improving the way that we use our downtown parking, looking at the timing of existing parking and making changes, better wayfinding so that visitors to the city know how to get to parking in a faster way instead of circling a block. That creates issues with regard to a lot of people just circling around, traffic issues, and looking for new supply. And as noted by Lisa earlier, we're looking at executing a lease for the upper floor of the Samtrans building for all-day free employee parking. And we're looking at other sources of parking supply in the downtown, some very significant ideas there. We also have 100 parking spaces at the Caltrain parking lot that are available, that will be available after close of business, like 5 or 6 p.m. on weekdays, and then all weekend. So right across from Cherry Street, as part of the Transit Village project, we negotiated 100 parking spots that would be available free to the public and businesses in that location. Some of it just requires some agreements to be completed, and we are working with Samtrans on those agreements right now and should have those completed in the next few months. So parking supply in the downtown, along with Wheeler Plaza, will improve significantly, I think, in the next year or two. And in terms of overall supply, in the next 5 years, I think we will have quite a bit more parking in the downtown. And just as a personal note, it is inconvenient, and we anticipate parking right in front of a business. It's part of the way we're designed, I guess. But you can still always find a parking space. It may be somewhat inconvenient to walk a block or two, but you can still, based on our numbers that we understand, you can still park in the downtown depending on how far you want to walk.
Thank you. And one can imagine in 5 years where every parking space has a chip in it and senses whether there's a car there, and your San Carlos app tells you that, well, there are actually 95 spaces just waiting for you to pull in. We'll get there, I'm sure.
Yeah, and just to add to that, thank you for bringing that up. We do have a number of parking spaces in the downtown with that on San Carlos Avenue and Laurel Street, and the new Wheeler Plaza parking garage will have that technology in it. It does have it. And we will have digital signage on the outside of Wheeler Plaza so that when you drive up, you'll see how many parking spaces are available in that plaza. So in less than a year, we'll have that signage up and available.
Thanks very much, and hopefully that gives both us, but also the public, a little more insight as to, how the city's thinking about it and what kind of short-term changes are going to be made to address what's a real problem for everybody.
Wow, what did I miss? We are a high-tech, progressive city. I didn't know that about the chips. I appreciate the modifications you did in a short time, especially the solar and trying to reduce the mass of the project. I think it's a very handsome building that you've designed that should fit in well with the transit village across the way in architectural style and mass. And that being said, unless there's any more comment from the commission, I'll move that the Planning Commission grant approval for design review, tentative map, below market rate housing plan, and the transportation demand management plan to allow the construction of one new 4-story building with 24 residential units and 2 commercial units at 560 El Camino Real, APN 050 074 080 and 090 and 100 for the reasons incorporated in the staff report, with the condition in the code compliance certificate and tentative map certificate, with the agreement that solar panels will be provided.
And through the chair, I just wanted to note the staff recommended change into condition 12X regarding the easement. So those 2 adjustments to the conditions.
Yes, understood.
I'll second.
Commissioner Roof,
Yes.
Commissioner Jacoponi,
Yes.
and Chair Bradley.
Yes.
Congratulations. Good
You
luck
all.
with your project.
Thank you, everyone, for coming and speaking. We'll move on to the last proposal for this meeting. And we have anyone else that wants to speak, please turn in a slip. The forms are in the back table. Where is it? Okay. Lisa, again.
Yes, good evening.
Oh, nice to have you twice.
Would you like me to start?
Please.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Lisa Costa-Sanders, Principal Planner. I'll be presenting 1 and 2 Circle Star Way as well as 1709 Industrial Road. It's a request for an ordinance amendment to modify the development standards contained within Ordinance 1230 to allow modifications to the traffic signal for the Circle Star development. All right. A little bit of background. The site is 8.4 acres located along Industrial Road, with 7.3 acres of it being located within the city of San Carlos and 1.1 acres located within Redwood city limits. The site was previously occupied by the Circle Star Theater, known as the Theater in the Round, which operated from the 1960s until it closed in 1994. The San Carlos City Council approved the Circle Star development in 1997, and that included a little over 200,000 square feet office complex housed in 2 buildings, an 118-room extended stay hotel, parking structure, as well as surface parking. The site was zoned planned development, and the development standards for the project are contained within Ordinance 1230. The development standards specifically restrict traffic from the project going across Industrial Road onto G Street in the adjacent residential neighborhood. And the applicant requests an ordinance amendment to amend the development standards within Ordinance 1230 to allow modifications to the traffic signal at Circle Star Way and Industrial Road. Just to orient you a bit, this is the existing intersection. It consists of a 4-legged, singleized intersection that serves north and southbound Industrial Road, and Circle Star Way at the eastern leg and G Street at the western leg. Movements from Circle Star Way out of the site are currently restricted to right turn only, and you see that there's the median there and that curve so that it really gets you to the right only. Traffic is able to turn right or left out of G Street, and as well on Industrial Road, traffic can turn left into G Street or left into Circle Star. And this is the proposed intersection configuration. The applicant is requesting to modify, create a new median that would prohibit traffic to go straight onto G Street, but would allow movements that would be able to exit right turn into northbound industrial, or exit a left turn into southbound industrial. The proposed intersection design has been reviewed by the San Carlos City Engineer as well as Redwood City Transportation and Planning staff, and both concur with the proposed intersection design. So the method to allow that intersection design modification would be to modify Development Standard 10C of Ordinance 1230, and staff has suggested the wording of 10C be replaced with this wording you have before you, which is to allow right and left turn exits from the site onto Industrial Road pursuant to the plan dated August 30th, prepared by Fair and Piers, and that was the plan that I just showed you. And that would include the median to prevent the project traffic from exiting the site and crossing Industrial Road and entering into G Street. Pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, a mitigated negative declaration was prepared, and that found no significant environmental impacts resulting from the modified traffic signal. We do have mitigation measures to reduce impacts related to air quality. That's restricted to construction, biology, in case there's any nesting birds that would be disturbed during construction, as well as cultural resources in the event any archaeological or human remains are found. And the mitigated negative declaration was available for public review and comment from November 16th through December 7th. The document was available on the city's website, as well as a copy was available at City Hall and the city's library. We also placed a copy of the document at Redwood City Hall, as well as the Redwood City Library. I received a number of comments, just kind of questions of clarification, but no formal public comments were submitted on the CEQA document. And as far as public outreach, the developer did host 2 community meetings, one in March last year and one in August as a follow-up meeting. Both of those meetings were very well attended. I attended myself, as well as staff from Redwood City attended as well. At the first meeting, residents from the adjacent neighborhood expressed concern with the potential for cut-through traffic, and they also requested options for the proposal. And I should back up a little bit to indicate that at that first meeting, the developer did have 2 proposed intersection configurations. One would allow traffic to go straight into G Street, and the other is more similar to what you have before you that would restrict it to left turns only. So after hearing the comments at that first community meeting, the developer decided to remove that first option that had traffic going through and only proceed with an option of left turn only out of the project site. They also researched some other options that were discussed at the meeting, one of those being a traffic signal further south that's opposite Garden Street, the ability to exit the site onto Veterans Boulevard to the east, as well as further research on the cut-through traffic into the neighborhood. The alternate location for the traffic signal was not deemed beneficial, and it was found that Caltrans would not permit a driveway on a Veterans Boulevard due to the proximity of the freeway off-ramp. And the traffic consultant also found the cut-through traffic to be minimal through the neighborhood. The traffic consultant is here this evening and can further expand on that research if you have any questions relating to that. And then finally, the developer modified the intersection design a bit to make that median even larger, to really make sure that the traffic would be going left and would not be able to make that straight through to G Street movement. And for the meeting, the public notice was mailed to property owners within 500 feet of the site. We also expanded that notification to try to reach more of the residential neighbors, sent it both to property owners and occupants of the neighborhood. That was mailed on January 9th and then published on January 10th, and I have not received any comments. This is the motion, should you choose to make it. I'm happy to answer any questions. I also have our CEQA consultant here this evening if you have any questions on the CEQA document, and the applicant's traffic consultant is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker for the applicant?
Yes, the applicant would like to make a presentation.
Oh, good. Did you bring one of these?
I believe he did.
And your name? Well, okay, I've got it.
Okay, no questions at this time then?
I don't.
Thank you.
Thank you. All yours.
All right. Good evening, commissioners. Lisa.
Good evening.
Thank you for all your help. So we have a real brief presentation, which this one goes, which Lisa pretty much covered everything that's on there. So I'm going to kind of skip through to the main slide, which addresses the community outreach that we did. So we met twice, once on March 28th and the other time on August 22nd. As Lisa said, it was well represented by the residents, predominantly from Redwood City. And their biggest concern was the traffic going through their streets, G Street all the way down there. And as you know, Amanda Heinke from Fair and Piers will explain, the majority of that traffic is a result of Waze and Google Maps, because they have all this new technology now, which shows people how to get places quicker, theoretically quicker. So we will show that it's not a result of our development, but it's just a result of the technology that's out there today. So as Lisa said, we did address many of the concerns of the public, whereas we increased the size of the median. We made it as best we could to make sure no one could make an illegal turn going into G Street. And again, we believe that no one from our site will be doing that anyway, and believe, again, this left turn signal will avoid a lot of the legal turns that are taking place today and make the site safer for everybody. We did put a letter out to all the occupants of the buildings. We have 3 tenants there, and we basically asked them to please give consideration to the Redwood City residents, and told them we would appreciate that they not use those private streets or the public streets within Redwood City. So we've taken that action. And, you know, besides what Lisa said, I mean, again, we've tried to address the best we could, you know, the public's concerns. And once again, the intersection, which Lisa brought up earlier, one thing she didn't say, we did add a sidewalk, because right now the pedestrians actually don't have a sidewalk to get into the site. So we've added a sidewalk on both sides of there, because there are people that do get dropped off on the other side of the street, and they've got nowhere to get into the site. So we did enlarge and widen the, you know, the driveway into the site by putting the sidewalks on both sides. So with that, I can pass it on to Amanda to talk about the traffic study itself, or if you have any direct questions of me. Again, I'm Bill Masori. I'm the Director of Development with Griffin Capital. We actually own the facility.
Thank you, Bill.
My pleasure.
I do have one question.
Sure.
If a bicyclist wanted to turn left, would the signal see the bicyclist and turn green?
There will be sensors in the street that we're putting on there. I don't know technically. I mean, it will be on I'm assuming there will be left turn. The light will cycle that way.
Cycles continuously, or?
It hasn't been designed yet. I'm sure we'll work with city staff and your traffic engineers to, you know, design it the right way. But that's a good question, and I don't know if you have an answer to that, Amanda, when you come up and talk about that, but we can certainly look into that and make sure if there's technology for that to happen without the weight of a car being at the stop sign, maybe there's a button they can press that will turn it on like a pedestrian. So we can certainly look at that.
That would be great.
Perfect.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Amanda Heinke with Fair and Piers. Thanks for having me tonight. I just have a few slides on an overview of the traffic study that we did. And then if you have any further, more detailed questions, I would be happy to touch on those. So the project, we focused on 3 signalized intersections, the Circle Star, G Street, and Industrial Road intersection, obviously, as well as the Industrial Way and Whipple, and Veterans and Whipple. The analysis studied both existing plus project, background, and background plus project. The background growth included growth of projects in both the Redwood City and City of San Carlos that were both under construction or approved at the time of the counts that were conducted. For all project scenarios, existing plus project and background plus project, all study intersections were found to operate at LOSD or better, and no significant traffic impacts were found with the operational analysis that we conducted. that's pretty much the extent of our analysis that we did. I can share with you any more detailed questions that you might have on the any of the staff report or studies that we presented. If you have any questions at this time.
Amanda, it would be helpful, I think, if you would explain the different levels of service to
Sure.
to
Sorry.
us and the audience.
Of course.
Briefly, thank you.
LOS stands for level of service. It's a qualitative measure that is applied to intersection delay. So if an intersection is operating at LOS-A, that indicates favorable free flow conditions, hardly any queues by motorists, and whereas LOS-E or F indicates, very congested conditions with queuing.
Thank you. It's helpful.
I have a question. I see that you estimate that 2/3 of the exiting traffic would take advantage of the left turn, the new left turn option. So what are those cars doing now?
Those cars right now they must take a right outside of the site right now. And
A block or two and make a U-turn, or I'm just curious where.
well, not all of those 2/3 are going up and making making a U-turn by our estimates. Some of them definitely are doing that. That was confirmed by, field site visits that we did. But they were assumed to be going up to the entrance off of Brittany onto the 101 freeway up there.
I see. And so now they would head south and go on to the Whipple entrance to 101.
Exactly.
In terms of trip generation, like the egress trips over the course of the day, how much is driven by the hotel, and how much is driven by the offices there, or the other businesses? Just rough. Do you have any idea?
I'd have to look at the IT trip generation.
Page 225, there's tabulations.
Good.
Yeah, according to the ITE trip generation, the office development is much more daily trips than the hotel in itself. I would say about a quarter of them are for the hotel, and the rest are for the office.
So I'm gathering then when you're talking about where are people going, it's people commuting at the end of the day. It's really not the hotel, because one would think they'd be more of their morning trips. So you're going to get your bulk in the evening. Yeah. And do you have any comment around the other location for a signal that was looked at? I guess it was the southern exit. Mm-hmm. And would it be? What was the biggest concern? Was it that adding two lights in close proximity was a problem, or was it some other traffic factor? What did you have a recommendation either way to not do it or to do it? What would you say?
Yeah, there are a couple factors in play here. That intersection, center line to center line, is measured approximately 275 feet from the existing signal. Generally, industry standard, the closest intersections are typically spaced as 300 feet. That's not necessarily, there are always exceptions to those. But what happens, or what can happen when signals are spaced too closely together, is that the driver could have a sight distance issue with, or getting confused between which green bulb or red bulb that they're looking at when they're approaching. One way to fix that would be to make sure that the angle of the lights are done in such a way that it doesn't have driver confusion. So there is ways to work around that. So that was one of the main considerations. The other consideration is that Industrial Way is it's a fairly busy corridor, and the more intersections that you put on a corridor kind of increases the overall delay experienced on a corridor. So the overall operational performance of Industrial in and of itself, there might be more delay for drivers on the road.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I guess there are no more questions yet.
Maybe I could ask Bill a follow-up on that. It seemed like the residents that they had raised the proposal, and you had considered it for signalizing the southern entrance and using that as the primary left-hand turn point. Can you sort of explain your thinking as to why that wasn't an option you'd like to pursue?
Sure. Again, to be clear, from our standpoint, if that were the only option that the commission would approve, we'd accept that. However, just from an overall site standpoint, it makes sense for that traffic signal to be at the gateway to the project. And as Amanda said, adding another traffic signal within less than 300 feet does add more congestion to the project. It actually is more cost effective for us to do it on Garden Street, to be honest with you. But all the studies that Fair and Pierce did with Amanda suggest that there'd be no incremental traffic or no incremental benefit to the Redwood City residents if the intersection were on Garden Street or on G Street. Again, we believe we're not impacting those neighborhoods. So the rationale for Garden Street was that's a dead-end street, so no one would illegally go straight, right? Again, we don't believe our project is creating that event. And again, if that's the one where the city would prefer to be on Garden Street, we'd be more than happy to put it there. But believe from an overall site planning perspective, it makes more sense to be at the gateway of the project, which is Circle Star.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone? Well, I have one speaker card here. Kate Suti, is it Suki? Sorry if I mispronounce your name, Kate.
Hello, my name is Kate Sutku, and I'm an employee of Upstart, which is located at 2 Circle Star Way. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of Upstart employees regarding the proposal to alter the intersection at Circle Star Way and Industrial Road to allow for left turn access from Circle Star Way onto Industrial Road. In Upstart's San Carlos office, we have more than 180 full-time employees working in the office each day. And last week, we actually sent a survey to our employees asking if they turn left or if they would like to turn left, given the choice, or if they're right turners out of the parking lot. And we had 67% of our employees responded saying that if they had the ability to turn left, they would turn left. So the majority of people need to turn left and go southbound on Industrial Road each day when leaving work. Additionally, we have many employees who commute via bicycle and have expressed that the addition of a lane allowing them to turn left would improve bicycle safety for them, as they've encountered drivers who are confused about not being able to turn left, who just don't yield to them in that pedestrian crosswalk that's currently located there. And so they feel that having a left turn lane would provide a more safe method of transport for them leaving the building. So therefore, we request that the San Carlos Planning Commission recommend that the ordinance amendment be adopted to allow for the intersection and traffic light to be updated to accommodate left turns from Circle Star Way onto Industrial Road. We feel that this change would both improve the flow of traffic that exits Circle Star Way and improve the safety of drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians in the area. We are conscious of the neighborhood's concerns for traffic, and we also hope that the updates to this intersection, which would continue to block traffic from directly entering the neighborhood by going straight, that we hope the updates in the median would maintain their privacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there now anyone else that would like to speak in support or opposition? Now is your time. Seeing none, then I move that we close the public hearing on this project.
Second that.
Commissioner Iacopone?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
And Chair Bradley?
Yes. Discussion among them.
Just a quick question for staff. Is there any other consideration given to ways to dissuade people who might be inclined to take a left and then go straight? Meaning, I think there was a sign. Are there any other markers or messages, or something like neighborhood or no through traffic or other? Did we consider those?
Yes, we did talk to the City of Redwood City about any signage they would put on their side to prohibit through traffic. I believe they have one of those signs down farther, but that's not something they have in their traffic manual or their plans is to install those types of signage. There could be a sign on the project side that said left only, no through traffic. And then we can also request, once it's installed, maybe we have a reader board that alerts that there's a change to the intersection, and try to get some initial enforcement from our sheriff's office.
Okay. And if the residents in that neighborhood wanted to pursue that other signage, they'd talk to Redwood City?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, good.
Another question, technical question. Is the width of the turn sufficient to allow those big, if they ever wanted them, commuter buses to maneuver?
It needs to accommodate a fire engine, so therefore it accommodates commuter buses and garbage trucks. Yes, thank you.
Just one simple question about, is our Transportation Commission and Department, I know they've been involved in this, do we know more than they know now, or how's it work? That they're advised of where we are? I know when I first read this, I thought this is a Transportation Commission project, not a Planning Commission project, a signal light and realignment. And the same with Redwood City. They're up to speed on what we're doing.
Yes, so I've worked very closely with Redwood City staff. We've had multiple meetings with them. We've worked with the planning manager. I've updated the assistant city manager and city manager. Also met with their transportation manager to go over the different configurations. And then they also had conversations with our city engineer. So they had shared discussions about the configuration. And they're both in agreement that this meets both jurisdictions' kind of design criteria. So they are supportive of it. Given the fact that the neighborhood seemed to accept it, our main concern was how the neighborhood would react to this. And so staff from both cities was pretty much neutral until we heard the neighborhood comments.
Good. That's very reassuring.
And, despite my question earlier, I do like the idea of not having two signals. I mean, fewer is better, more flow is better than less flow, so good with one.
I have no other concerns.
Nor I.
I'm good.
I do appreciate the Planning Commission's comment, though, about bicycle being triggered. And so if that's something you want to add to your motion, we can make sure we work with the applicant, whatever the appropriate practices are in San Carlos, if it's either a signal or I'm not sure if it's a sensor, to make sure that the bicycle traffic is triggered with the light.
Maybe the follow-on is the standard, the design standard for a pedestrian activated one anyway? So that there is now a new crosswalk, or there is an existing crosswalk, you can hit a button as a pedestrian?
Right, but you might want that button to be in that left turn lane as well.
Yes, exactly.
So that's something I'd be happy to look into. I appreciate that comment.
I guess my tendency is to favor this because it seems unnecessary to make cars turn right and then take a longer trip home. It increases the mileage, adds up per day, and I don't see much potential for negative impact. So to me, it seems to be mostly a win-win situation, and so I would support it.
I support it. My only comment is I can't believe that it's 25 years since the Circle Star closed. I remember going to events there. My wife told me she heard Sammy Davis Jr. there 25 years ago. It's
quite the institution.
I'm showing my age.
Well, with that, then I'll move that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution recommending the City Council approve the mitigated negative declaration. And I further move the Planning Commission adopt the resolution recommending the City Council approve the ordinance amending the development standards contained within Ordinance 1230 to allow modifications to the traffic signal for the Circle Star development, and with the one condition that as part of the approval process, there is a bicycle activated, whatever current state of technology is, sensor for the left turn.
Second. Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Iacopone?
Yes.
And Chair Bradley?
Yes, thank you. That concludes our second project. Thank you all for coming. Congratulations, applicants. Next is announcements.
Yes, through the chair for item 7A, report on recent City Council actions. Staff does not have anything to report to the Commission this evening.
Can staff remind us when the retail firearms issue will be addressed at City Council?
Yes, we can certainly skip to item 7D. The retail sales, regulation of retail sales of firearms and ammunition will be coming forward to the Planning Commission. It's scheduled to come back to the Commission on February the 4th. So that's something that staff is currently working on. As you recall, there were study sessions last year. It came forward as a study session with the Planning Commission and also recently with the City Council, and staff has received some direction. So a draft ordinance will be presented on February the 4th. And then also just a friendly reminder for next month that the second meeting of the month will also be on a Tuesday, given the President's Day holiday. So that would be Tuesday, February the 19th. And then a couple of other dates dates and events I wanted to remind the Commission about is that on February the 21st, there will be a bicycle and pedestrian plan workshop being hosted by Public Works staff, as well as the consultants from the firm called Alta. This will be a public workshop at 6 p.m. in the San Carlos Library, February 21st. It seems to be a topic that a lot of people have a lot of interest in. There's a survey on the website, but we definitely do want to have a chance to meet with the community in person. So again, that'll be on Thursday, February 21st, 6 p.m. And then just a reminder that on March 4th, staff anticipates scheduling the EIR scoping meeting for the Black Mountain Townhouse project at the Planning Commission meeting of March 4th. So that's just a reminder for that. And those are all I have to report for this evening. Thank you.
I have one announcement, again, reminding you of the possibility if you you're not new anymore, but you're seasoned and experienced, but there is a San Mateo County Planning Commissioner Training Academy, they call it, and it's at 6 o'clock on the last day of the month, January 31st, at the San Mateo City Library, 6 o'clock, with some light appetizers, I'm told. If I get some money from the APA to do it, we'll see. The APA, American Planning Association, Cal Chapter, Northern Section, will have an all-day retreat on this coming Saturday, January 26th, where we kind of plan ahead for the next year, things like awards, banquets, and meetings and events throughout the year. Thank you. Any more announcements or questions? If not, I declare the meeting adjourned.